We'll just get right into it. Yokoso ashitare. Welcome back to my best efforts of trying to translate a dead language. Because, I guess I'm a nerd, and there's no hope for me. But jumping right on into it, once upon a time, in the province of Kai, which Kai is fairly removed from the capital city at the time, the Heian capital, which is now Kyoto. But once upon a time, in the province of Kai, there was a sumobito, so a sumo wrestler, by the name of Oi no Mitsuo. Now, Oi no Mitsuo was a very strong, very successful sumo wrestler. However, he was a bit shorter than most of the other ones, and he was a stocky, sturdy guy. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as soon as you hear that. You know those like power lifter dudes that you'll see at the gym, or maybe not even a power lifter, but you know those gorilla types who are like short and stocky, but just like sturdy. They're just built. You could probably hit them with a car and they wouldn't even be phased. And as far as this story is concerned, that's probably true. You probably could hit this guy with a car because everybody up to this point has been inhumanly strong. And that's going to be the same in this story. But anyway, this story is sort of about him, not entirely. It's actually more about his sister. Now, his sister is not named because, welcome to ancient Japan. The women usually don't get names. But Mitsuo's sister was a extremely beautiful woman around the age of 27, 28 or so. And she lived in a building really close to where Mitsuo also lived. Like, she lived on the same estate, but she had her own building, her own little area. And it was close enough that Mitsuo could occasionally come and visit her and talk to her because, the lives of very affluent, well-off Japanese noblewomen was actually rather boring. And clearly she wasn't married, so she wasn't going anywhere. And this way, Mitsuo could come, hang out with her, say hi to her, and, make sure she's looked after. Make sure she's got food, make sure she's got a place to stay, make sure, nothing hurts her. Not that that was a big deal, as you will see. But one day, there was a man. Again, he remains unnamed. But this man was on the run from somebody. We don't really know what happened, just that he had done something that was probably not the smartest idea, and he was on the run, trying to get away from these people chasing him. And he was, clearly as you will see, a kind of a bandit. And wouldn't you know it, he happens upon Mitsuo's estate. He finds Mitsuo's sister's little area, her room, her building, sees that there's a woman inside, and thinks to himself, oh great, I can take her as a hostage. That'll get me out of this pinch. Because, when you're reduced to taking hostages, things always just work out well, right? Isn't that how it happens? But anyway, he barges into this lady's room. He grabs her from behind, and he takes his sword, and he sticks it up against her. He doesn't kill her, obviously. He needs a hostage. But he sticks it up against her, and he threatens her. You're going to get me out of this. Thinking of, like, Captain Jack Sparrow. Except not as suave or interesting. But, of course, this did not go unnoticed to the lady servants, who were front row seats to all of this. And one of them specifically ran off to go get Mitsuo. Because, Mitsuo is the guy in charge of this whole thing. Mitsuo is super duper strong. He's the best guy. We need to tell him. So, after having a little bit of a freak out, he comes barreling in to Mitsuo's part of the house, of the estate, to get him. And says something to the effect of, Mitsuo, sir, the lady's been kidnapped. Mitsuo, sir, the lady's been kidnapped. Some guy came out from nowhere. He's got a huge sword and he just took her. She needs help. She's in trouble. You gotta come save her. And Mitsuo, seeing this guy, flabbergasted, out of breath, disheveled, doesn't even look at him. Barely registers his presence. And continues doing what he was doing, which I like to imagine he was like doing some calligraphy or writing or something. But without even looking up from what he was doing, he just said something to the effect of, is that so? Well, in order to take her hostage, this bandit has to be as strong as the legendary Ujinaga from Satsuma. I mean, wow, that's something, all right. Meanwhile, the servant, of course, is flabbergasted at this. Does bro not care? Does he not care about his sister? What 0 Fs are being given right now, and the servant can't understand it. So after sitting there dumbstruck for a second, like, what? Now, he didn't actually say anything to Mitsuo. Because, Mitsuo was the guy who paid him, and Mitsuo was a inhumanly strong sumo wrestler that could probably just snap him in half without even trying. So it's not like he was going to actually insult him or anything, but I'm pretty sure he was sitting there thinking, what is the matter? What is wrong with you? Your sister is gonna, do you not care that she's about to get skewered by a bandit? What is the matter with you? But after sitting there for a minute, processing that Mitsuo clearly was not actually that concerned, the servant decided that the next best thing would be to run back to where the lady was and take up a position somewhere where he was out of the way, where he could see what was actually happening. So that's what he did. He came running back, took up a secure, safe area where he could peer in at what was going on without being discovered. And the first couple of things that he noticed was, one, this was actually really bad because the lady wasn't actually wearing much. It was summer and it was hot. And so she was wearing just a thin kimono type thing. It wasn't even a full kimono. It was just like a single thin, probably silk something nice. But that's all she had on. And while wearing this kimono thing, which still had long, billowy sleeves, she covered her face with her left hand, as, is proper for all Heian aristocratic women to do. Probably had her face turned away from this guy too, just because, women weren't supposed to show their faces to men they weren't related to, especially evil bandit men. So she has her left hand is covering her face, but her right hand is holding on very gently to this bandit's sword arm, because the bandit was positioned behind her and he had both his arms wrapped around her. And one hand was just grasping her, but the other hand had this huge, savage-looking sword, just terrifying-looking blade. And he was holding it, reverse grip. He was holding it like this. He had his arms wrapped around her, and the sword was up on her side, her midsection, but the side of it. And again, she was covering her face with her left hand, and with her right hand, she was holding onto the bandit's sword arm. Just very lightly, just touching it, Very graceful and dainty. Classic damsel in distress figure. And of course, the lady is crying. Obviously, this is a very, very stressful situation. Crazy guy might try to kill her, and he's probably shouting and yelling and just probably smells bad too because he's a bandit. It's not good. But in order to calm herself down, she takes her left hand from her face and she starts fondling. Okay, don't get any dirty ideas from this, please. But she starts fondling some... This isn't gonna help. Some arrow shafts. I'm sorry. I can't. But she starts playing with some arrows that are right there. A bundle of 20 or 30 or so arrows, right? Now, the thing you have to remember about arrows, these are sturdy sticks, okay? Sturdy sticks. They're meant to be shot at high velocity at people, targets, and when they impact, they don't just lightly tap. It's not like arrowheads are actually particularly sharp. They need some force to penetrate stuff. And so these shafts have to be sturdy. They can't just break. So there was a bundle of 20 or 30, between 20 and 30 arrows that are just there. And she starts nervously fidgeting with them, is what she starts doing. And nobody pays any mind to this because, obviously she's stressed out. Who knows what she's going to do? But she gathers up these arrows all together. And while still crying, she takes her finger and she pushes down on them, and they're up against the floor. And with one finger, she snaps between 20 and 30 of these thick, sturdy shafts clean in half with one finger. Now, again, one arrow you could probably break. It would be hard because, again, they're sturdy. 2 arrows, you're probably not. Or maybe some people could. 3 arrows, no, it's done. It's done. It's over. You're not breaking them. So you get 20 to 30 of these suckers, and she just snaps them by pressing on them with one finger. And the story specifically says she snaps them like they were a single rotten twig. So, of course, both the servant and the bandit see this and just instantly go. And instantly the servant goes, "Oh, I get why the boss wasn't worried about her. Even someone like him would have to use a hammer to smash that many arrows. This lady is an absolute unit of a woman. Oh, I see. And oh boy, that bandit's gonna get broken into tiny pieces. Oh, he shouldn't have done this." And of course, as soon as these arrows snap, the bandit too instantly goes, "Oh, this is not good. If this lady has this kind of supernatural she-demon power, I probably can't even hurt her with the sword that I'm carrying. It's a hunk of junk to me right now. And not only that, but she's got her other hand on my arm, which she could probably just crush right now if she wanted to, and there is nothing I could do about it. And if my arm, probably the entire rest of my body. Well, I'm out." And with that, he instantly let go of the lady. I'm assuming he probably shoved her because just wants to get her as far away from him as possible. But he breaks away from her and he instantly tears off out of the building. Unfortunately for him, though, the estate security had shown up by this point. So they surrounded him and they administered justice as it was administered in pre-modern times in ancient Japan, which means they beat the ever-loving crap out of this guy. Just mercilessly kicked him, punched him, threw him to the ground, made him eat dirt. I don't know exactly all what they did. But after beating him and tying him up, they brought him to Mitsuo because this man had trespassed. He had threatened his sister. In this instance, Mitsuo was the victim. Even though technically his sister was the victim, but he was in charge of his sister. In a sense, he kind of was both responsible and in charge of his sister. So an affront to her was actually an affront to him. So they bring this guy, tied and bloody, and throw him before Mitsuo. And Mitsuo, again having zero cares in the world, decided that he was going to have a little bit of fun with this ne'er-do-well. And so he just saunters on over casually to this guy, and he squats down next to him, and he goes, "So, what made you suddenly decide to change your mind? You took my sister hostage and then you just bolted. What was that all about?" And again, this man, now beaten and tied up, and in front of somebody who obviously is a really strong guy, big guy, sturdy guy, and who has every right to just off him, he explains, on the verge of tears, "Well, sir, I was on the run, and I couldn't think of any other ways to get out of the situation, so thinking your sister was just like any other woman, I took her hostage. But then I saw her snap 20 arrows in half like they were rotten twigs, and I thought to myself, I gotta get out of here, or I'm a dead man." Hearing this, Mitsuo just started laughing. He just burst into this full, deep, sonorous laughter, the kind that you can think of a big, jolly old man to start doing. Just laughing. Clearly at this guy's expense, but he kind of deserves it. And after laughing, he looks at this guy and goes, "Yeah, bro, here's the thing. There's no way you could have actually caused her harm. If she had wanted to, she could have grabbed your arm, snapped the shoulder bone right out of its socket, and then pulled your entire arm clean off if she had wanted to. You must have some really good karma stored up to prevent her from doing just that. Because I'm sure that if I got a hold of you and grabbed your arm, I could twist it and force you to the ground and crush all the little brittle bones in your tiny chest. But you see that woman? She's twice as strong as I am. She may look pliant and womanly, but trust me, dude, she's a monster. Whenever we hand wrestle each other, she grabs my arm and squeezes so hard that I have no choice but to instinctively flex all the fingers in my hand and tell her I quit, I give, every single time without fail. Alas, though, if only she had been born a man, she would have been the single greatest sumo wrestler to ever have lived. But as she's a woman, she can't. And that is a huge, huge shame. Now again, I didn't make the rules for ancient Japan. Apparently in ancient Japan, women weren't allowed to be sumo wrestlers. That's not my fault. Don't at me. Now clearly, again, Mitsuo was saying all this just to freak this guy out. He wanted to get his just desserts in such a way, and he really wanted to shake him up. And that's exactly what he did. Because as soon as this guy heard everything that Mitsuo just said, and how he had barely escaped with his life, and how Mitsuo was very descriptive of all the terrible, terrible things that both he and his sister could do to them in this instance, his heart sank, just dropped like a rock through the water. And he just started literally weeping and begging for his life. And said something to the effect of, "I'm sorry, I didn't know your sister was super strong. If I had known she was super strong, I would have never done this. I'm sorry, please don't kill me. Which, that's kind of a terrible excuse, bro. It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. If I had known your sister was super strong, I wouldn't have done this. But, if it's a not super strong woman that I can just bully, that's totally fine." He is a bandit, so he probably doesn't have much of a sense of justice or right and wrong. But whatever. But none of this begging and whining and weeping fazed Mitsuo. He just, again, continued staring at him with this mild bemusement, and finally told him, "If I wanted to, I could still crush you like a bug. And had you actually hurt my sister, that's exactly what I would do. But you had enough wits to drop your little hostage taker act here and escape with your life. And so killing you seems like a bit of a waste. So you know what? I'm gonna let you loose. But remember, that woman over there can snap deer antlers like they're twigs, to say nothing of your skinny little self. And don't you ever forget this. Don't you ever forget this moment." And with that, Mitsuo sent him away. And thus is it said that that woman was far stronger than anybody could have ever thought. And that's the end of the story. I do have one linguistic comment to make, however. In the story, Mitsuo talks about how his sister would grab his arm and make his fingers spread, essentially is what it is. And I'm not entirely sure what it is. The word that they use is called te tawamure. Te means hand, and tawamure means something like playing. playing around, joking around, having some fun. So whatever it was some kind of like strength challenge, like Mercy, if you've ever played that, or Bloody Knuckles or something, where the first person to say I give loses. But this kind of thing actually has been around Japan for a long, long time. I haven't ever seen anything like it in modern Japan, but like in the Kojiki, which is the oldest written work of Japanese ever, it tells the story of the gods of Japan and how Japan was created and how the world was created. And one story in particular, my favorite story, because it involves my favorite of the Japanese gods, Take Mikazuchi. Take Mikazuchi gets into a trial of strength with another god by the name of Take Minakata. Sorry, this is going to get a little confusing. But in this contest of strength, Take Minakata asks Take Mikazuchi to stick his arm out so he can grab it. And whatever he is going to do is he's going to grab his arm and probably squeeze or something. But when Take Mikazuchi sticks his arm out and Take Minakata grabs it, Take Mikazuchi turns his arm into an icicle, which means that Take Minakata can't grab it. His hand just continuously slips right off. And then he turns it into a sword, which freaks Take Minakata out, and he stumbles back. And then Take Mikazuchi says, okay, well now I gave you my arm, you have to give me yours. Whereupon Take Minakata sticks his arm out, Take Mikazuchi grabs it, and crushes it in one fell crunch. And then Take Minakata, realizing that he's screwed, runs off, and Take Mikazuchi chases after him, catches up to him. Take Minakata begs for his life. Take Mikazuchi says, okay, I'll give you your life, but you have to listen to what we say. Anyway, that is just a long roundabout way of saying that whatever it was that they were doing here, it seems like this is a very, very ancient Japanese strength contest. A kind of game that they would play with each other. And it's not just in this story. And unfortunately, since we don't know what it is or how it actually worked, everybody back then did, so they just assume that you know what they're talking about. This is one of the frustrating parts about translating old Japanese stuff. Sometimes they just assume things that they never thought were going to go out of style or that everybody else just knew. And we oftentimes don't. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. I much appreciate you coming and listening to me ramble on and not do these stories justice, but I'm doing my best. If you liked what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. The usual tidbit, also share to all your weeb friends. And thank you again. Ito katejike no koso haberi kere. And that's going to be it. Thanks. Ciao.